I don't believe this is going to be a complete rout, which is going to cause a lot of pain out there for homeowners generally. And there's a number of insulating factors which especially suggest to me we're not going to see many very distressed sellers having to flog off their property for whatever they can get. Well, hello again, everybody. It's only a few days since I was online here chatting about the Reserve Bank's tightening of monetary policy. So let me step right back from the immediacy of what's happening in the real estate market and interest rates at the moment, and just remind you all about some of the longer term trends which are in train there, starting with why is it that we're seeing house prices fall away relatively rapidly, so far from peak to where they were in April, down about 10% in Auckland and Wellington, and about 6% on average around the country. A lot of things have come together all at once. It is not just one single thing there. We have from early last year the tightening up of the LVR regulations, or in fact coming back again in about February 2021. They were tightened up for investors in May and then tightened for everybody in November last year. We also had banks experimenting with debt to income ratios from about the middle of last year. We also had the Credit Contracts and Consumer Finance Act changes effective from December 1 last year, basically scaring banks about their lending, making them become really cautious and really getting the credit crunch going. We've had some pretty rapid increases in fixed mortgage rates, up by between 2 and 3% over the past year, so a bit of a shock to some people out there, but for those of us around long enough, we struggled to get a little bit excited, having first of all paid for myself 18.5% back in 1987. Some other negative factors, the opening up of the border, so people starting to shift some of their spending back towards travelling overseas rather than sticking around in New Zealand and doing up their home environment. And of course the soaring cost of living, making everybody cautious about obviously committing to a large multi-year or multi-decade level of expenditure on purchasing a house. So things have come together all at once. We've now got the market slowing down. It's obvious for everybody to see, but I don't believe this is going to be a complete rout, which is going to cause a lot of pain out there for homeowners generally. And there's a number of insulating factors which especially suggest to me we're not going to see many very distressed sellers having to flog off their property for whatever they can get. A key supporting factor is the fact that job security is high, very tight labour market is a positive thing, and there's only going to be a handful of people who will end up paying an interest rate above what they had to prove they could service to the bank when they took out the loan in the first place over, let's say, late 2020 and through a lot of 2021. So some good insulation coming through there. Construction costs are continuing to rise strongly. That not only tends to support the prices for existing housings, but also, as we can see, what I was predicting about a year ago, developers, builders starting to fall over. We've now got people starting to look back more strongly again at listings of existing properties. Construction is still going to be strong. It's still going to be fine, but it's where people tend to focus their attention. And so that's going to give a little bit of support out there as well. And a key thing to remember is there is a large backlog of buyers. At some stage, those buyers are going to step forward again. That's well over a year away. And as we get ourselves through to what I think will be the low for the market towards the middle of 2023, a lot of people will actively look for reasons to stay sitting on their hands, not to buy. They're going to say, I've heard talk about a brain drain. I've heard talk about the interest rates going to really high levels. I've heard talk about an oversupply of property. They will actively focus on these potentially negative things and choose not to do something. If you've been around long enough, you've seen this before, and you will know that right now and for the coming year will potentially provide you the best opportunity you will see in a decade or so to get exactly the type of property you want. The vendors are more willing to negotiate, and you're competing against far fewer buyers out there as well. But walking against the tide like that Warren Buffett sort of thing, very hard to do. I think a lot of people would be experiencing at the moment, but just be aware. There'll be a cyclical upturn again some year down the track when every man and his dog will try to jump in and buy again all at once. May not happen for a while. After bottoming out middle of next year, we could sit relatively flat for the housing market for maybe 2 or 3 years before we go back up again. But lots of water to go under the bridge before we get there. All the best.